Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Grafana Office Hours. My name is Marie Cruz. I'm one of your developer advocates here at Grafana. And today, there's a lot of amazing people here. So let's start with, I got it right. So let's start
Yes.
with Nicole. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nicole van der Hoeven. Welcome back to the show. And I'd like to welcome our two guests down here. They're new to the stream. So, welcome, Marco. Maybe you can introduce yourself next.
Yeah, sure. Thanks a lot. So, yeah, my name is Marco. I work at Grafana in the Faro team. I'm a front-end engineer, and currently my main focus is like in everything related to web performance, and I do work mostly on the Faro, the web SDK. Also do a bit on the front-end Oli plugin, but my most work is there. Yeah, I'm based in Germany, and yeah, super happy to be here. And then I will hand it over to Kostas, I think.
Hi everyone, I'm Kostas. I'm the tech lead of everything front-end observability, I guess. Been in Grafana for a little bit over 2.5 years now, and I'm based in Athens, Greece. And yeah, thanks for having me.
Amazing. Well, thank you both for joining us. I know previously we did one episode about Faro, but this was back when we were still doing K6 office hours and it was still pretty early stage. So I'm assuming a lot of changes have happened since then. But before we go deeper into what we're going to talk about today, we have a few announcements to share. So the first one, we are hiring. There's a lot of different areas where we are looking for new people. So, for example, on the dev advocacy side, we're looking for developer advocates. We're looking for a senior community manager. So, if you want to work with myself, with Nicole, and the rest of the amazing DevRel team, check out the job descriptions here. And there's also other open positions that we have. So especially around the K6 team, there's also professional services. So make sure to check out the official careers list for Grafana. So we'll share it in the comment section as well. Next announcement. So, couple of days ago, so we've actually released Grafana 10.2. So again, lots of amazing changes. There's now improved and interactive Grafana visualizations. It's available in public preview in all editions of Grafana. There's now a feature to generate Grafana panel titles, descriptions, and change summaries with AI. Again, available in public preview. You can now also share your dashboards with public dashboards. It's now again general available. And you can now integrate Grafana alerts with Grafana on call as well. So as you can see, there's a lot of different changes here. So make sure to read the blog posts. Again, we will share it in the comments. And specifically from Grafana K6, there's the Grafana K6 version 0.47 as well. So we've now released feature for binary metadata support in the K6 gRPC module. K6 browser as well, lots of updates. And I think K6 browser is now available as well in Grafana Cloud K6. So again, lots of changes from the K6 team. Announcement sites, I think, yeah, that is all from
I
me.
have something to plug.
Oh, you have
Um,
go.
yeah, so on if you go to grafana.com and you go scroll down to the bottom at the footer, you can actually sign up to the newsletter for some updates. And I've actually, even as a graphanista, I've found it a useful way to keep track of like the big releases. So I'm signed up with my personal email just so I can see all the big things. Like for example, on Grafana Cloud, there's Private Data Connect, which we've previously done a Grafana Office Hours about. There's, as Marie mentioned, browser testing with K6, also distributed tracing on Grafana Cloud that has just come up. Also, in terms of like recent stuff that we've done, I and our colleague Leandro Melendez, and also Antonio Cayero Merello. God, I keep forgetting his name. Do you remember?
I think you got it right, Mereo.
I am not entirely sure how to pronounce it, but the three of us, we have started this thing called Café con Grafana, and it is a kind of Grafana office hours, except en español. So, solo para hispanohablantes. I'm not a native Spanish speaker, but I'm doing my best, and we've done 2 episodes so far. And yesterday we talked about Grafana como código, Grafana as code. So check those episodes out as well. And I also just finished talking at TestCon Europe. I'm still in Vilnius, Lithuania. That's why I have a beautiful hotel background behind me.
Amazing.
But I'll post the recording for my talk when I have it. How about you, Marie? What's going on with you?
Not much. I mean, I think just in terms of future conferences, we do have agile testing days coming up.
Oh
And
yes.
we'll be doing a joint talk. And it's great because we're doing a talk not about like technical, not anything to do, I guess, about what we do, but it's still related. And I think it's an important topic. So we'll be talking about intersectionality in tech and developer advocacy. So quite excited for that. I'll be speaking at TestJS Summit as well, and Kostas and Marco will be happy about this. So I'll be talking about holistic web performance with Grafana Faro and K6. So that will be December in Berlin, Germany. So looking forward to that one. Um, I think that's all the announcements that we have. So Marco and Kostas, what is Grafana Faro?
I think we can take turns, and hopefully we have the same opinion. So, as you know, in the computer science, naming things is probably the second hardest problem, and Grafana Faro is one of these cases. And it's an internal name that we use, and when we're talking about Faro, we are mostly referring to the JavaScript agent or the Web SDK or how we call it. And so this is basically a piece of code that you can embed into your web application, and it will start sending telemetry data to some endpoint that can it can communicate with given a certain protocol. Um, and spoiler alert, that protocol can also be OpenTelemetry. Um, but Faro, in our minds at least, when we're talking about Faro, we're also talking about the cloud service that we are providing, which is called Frontend Observability, which is a very nice plugin that we have within Grafana Cloud, and you can use it to set up your web apps with your already existing um, cloud databases like Loki, Mimir, and Tempo, and have your data in there in a matter of minutes because it's like a very small snippet that you just get it into your code and it just works. And we also have some dashboards and some other very cool stuff that you can use to monitor your web applications.
So I have a question. Why is it called Faro? What does that? What
Okay,
does the name itself mean?
okay. It's probably, I think it was not 100% my idea, but back when we were brainstorming, the original name actually Faro came from was a hackathon.
Spanish?
No, no, yeah, I think it's Portuguese and for lighthouse, but maybe it's the same in Spanish. I'm not sure. Um, so originally it started as a what's it called? Hackathon project within Grafana, and it was two engineers and one designer that built the first draft of the SDK. And the first name of it was Kowalski. And I think it was a reference to the penguin from the Penguin of Madagascar, and because the team liked penguins. And we have kept that name for a while, and then when we were supposed to give it a proper name, not that I don't like Kowalski, I actually like it a lot. We were thinking of like what can we use, and we were talking about a lighthouse and like how it can help you observe things or like be aware if we may. And I think my idea was to call it Pharos, which is the lighthouse in Greek, and maybe it's Latin. I don't know the origins. And but we settled for the Portuguese version of it, which is Faro, because I think it has a more nice ring to it. But the background was a lighthouse and something that makes you aware of your surroundings.
Yeah, I love that. And I think as well, I know Google Lighthouse is not at all similar with Grafana Faro, but it's sort of, I guess, related if we think about web performance, that at least if someone says Faro, they can also think, oh yeah, that is Lighthouse, and they can also link the two projects together, although it's not completely related.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How about you, Marco? From your perspective, anything more to add from what Costa said?
No, I think Kostas covered it pretty well. Yeah, nothing more to add.
Nice. So it sounds like Grafana Faro is a real user monitoring solution, especially for web applications. I guess my next question is, why is it important that we do real user monitoring?
Yeah. So real user monitoring is like gives you insight in what is happening with your application out in the real world. Like how do real people, real users of it like perceive like how well your app works, how well the UX of this application is in terms of performance. You can also like, of course, track down errors. You will see like what errors occurring in this app. You can find out if certain errors maybe lead to users like dropping from your application. So you have a possibility to constantly like observe if anything like is behaving bad, or on the other side is everything is good, of course. And yeah, and this is very important because we also like in the web we want things to be as fast as possible, and so the reuser monitoring also helps us to find bad performance and also to enhance performance for our users. I mean, like if you have say an online shop and you are like slower as your competitions, maybe your users will go away if things take too long and buy somewhere else. And yeah, and like to tackle all those things, like reuser monitoring can help you.
Yeah, I agree because I guess when in terms of performance monitoring, we can break it down into real user monitoring, which you just explained, and there's also the other side, which is synthetic monitoring. From your perspective, like what are the key differences between the two? Because I understand that yes, real user monitoring is important. We need to be able to have an insight into what is going on for our real users, what their experience is when they're accessing their website. But at the same time, is that enough, or do we need to pair that up with synthetic monitoring tools as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like the differences between the two, like when I do synthetic monitoring, like I have lab data, I have a very well defined environment which is predictable, so I have also repeatable results, but it is a bit limited in like say the things which can go wrong of course, and like also like for example where a user like access my web page, latencies in the network, the different browsers which are out there, different devices from the best and newest smartphone to very old devices. These things are very hard to replicate in the lab environment. So mostly you have a limited amount of browsers you use, and yeah, you have very good network conditions. Of course, you can throttle things and so on. So I would say this is the biggest difference. Like field data is like what's going out there in the real world with all its pros and cons, and like the lab data is like getting predictable and repeatable results from the laboratory. Yeah, and of course both are important. So I use lab data. You can use lab data to find regressions. To if you like have it as a step in your CI/CD, you can use it when you are creating new features, and like you want to have a first idea how well the stuff behaves before you like release it out to the world, and then your users suddenly find some problems. Yeah, and the other way around, like I use then the real user monitoring, like to capture then like the real experience for our users, and also like to find the outliers. I want to find that percentage of users where things go really wrong, and also to tackle this. And this is very hard, I think, or somewhat hard to replicate in lab environments.
So I love that you brought up the difference between field data and lab data, because this is a point of contention I think that we should address. And pretty much, people think that there are two sides of it. You can be on one side or the other. And what determines which side you're on is your profession. Testers tend to err on the side of lab data, and the DevOps or like SREs tend to err on the side of field data. But it's really a false binary, because as Marco is saying, you should really have both. They both have their disadvantages. The lab data has the disadvantage of it actually not being real. So you can plan for it and try to get it as close as possible to how real users are behaving, but it's still not production. And on the other side, if you're only relying on field data, then many times that's already too late. The problem, whatever it is already in production. And wouldn't it have been nice to have found that and caught it early on in the cycle or whatever it is? And I think now might also be a good time, since Kostas mentioned that when people say Faro, there's like Faro the OSS, the SDK part of it, and then there's Faro the cloud related service or product. Edson from YouTube has asked, is that included in Grafana Cloud? Kostas, can you talk a little bit more about like what's included where, if you don't mind?
Yeah, sure. It is included in the Grafana Cloud, and it's also included in every account against the free tier as well. And you're getting charged based on the on ingestion, because all the data that you send through the SDK, they end up being ingested into the databases, Loki and Tempo, and they are being calculated into your monthly balance of ingestion. But it is included.
Awesome. I think later as well, we'll just have a quick demonstration of how it looks like
Great.
in Grafana Cloud. So, Edson, I think that will probably be a really insightful topic for you later on. But just going back to this lab and field data, because I totally agree with everyone's comments, and we've actually written a blog post about this, just to show the benefits of web performance testing with actually lab and field data. And the analogy that I did with this is like similar with car driving. So if we're only relying on lab data, like it's like test driving a car under controlled conditions. Like it's always gonna be the same route. The roads are really smooth. You know that the weather conditions is always gonna be great. But then that's not really what's gonna happen in real life. In real life, there's gonna be muddy roads, really dangerous roads, like slippery as well. So you're gonna experience issues in real life that you're not really gonna experience if you are just test driving a car. So this is the same with web performance, because no matter how much test scripts you have, it's really not gonna cover every single scenario that your users experience, because they probably access it using different query parameters, like different text fragments that can impact any web performance. They can use a different journey. They can be using a different network, like connection. So just relying on lab data or synthetic monitoring tools alone, it's limited in a sense that it can't really capture the real user experience. It's good though, because you can fix performance issues as early as possible. But this is why you should always complement it with field data, so at least you get a holistic picture of your application's web performance. So, yep, make sure to read that blog post if you want to know more about it. I guess in terms of like what data Grafana Faro collects, could the two of you share on a high level what kind of information like users can see if they try out Grafana Faro?
So yeah, so I can start, and please like add anything which I'm missing, Kostas. So by default, like the Faro, the Web SDK part, um, captures like the web vitals of a page. These are some UX related metrics, which are, I think, like it's mostly driven by Google. We also capture time to first byte, so you have like a first idea. For example, if you look at largest contentful paint and you see, okay, largest contentful paint minus time to first byte, so I know like maybe is the part the way the request takes slow, or is like something on my rendering part of it slow, which can be really helpful. We also automatically capture exceptions. These are only like unhandled exceptions, and also all promise rejections which are not caught with the respective handler. What else do we track? I think this is most of it. We also have a session feature built in, which like creates user or session IDs. So we also track those, and so you can like inspect sessions if you have a certain user which has a problem, and then you can search for the user session and find out like what is going on there. And then Faro can, of course, also collect more. It's built in a very modular way to also keep the bundle sizes small. So we don't want to deliver all the capabilities and have a very big JavaScript bundle, which is, of course, not good to waste too much resources. So you can enhance Faro with more instrumentation. So we can also capture performance timeline data from the browser. These are resource and navigation timings. Respective visualization will also come soon for this. You can even add open telemetry tracing and like different open telemetry instrumentations. We have built an own instrumentation which makes it easy so to set it up and to use it in Faro. So you will also get traces. Yeah, and I think this is most of it. I hope I didn't forget anything.
No, I think that's pretty much it. But I just want to add about the whole architecture decisions that we made back then. It's mostly an open source library that is meant to be fully extensible, but also provides saying defaults. And we will be providing saying more instrumentations as we go. But it is built in a way that if somebody needs to create their own instrumentation and use it with our SDK, they can do it. We provide the APIs within the SDK that you can create your own instrumentations, your own transports. So, for example, if you want to use WebSockets or protocol buffers or anything really, or if you want to port this SDK for Node.js, it's there, and it doesn't require any. It's a modular library, and we're looking forward for seeing any contributions to it.
Yeah. So I think Marco, you mentioned about the errors that it tracks. So let's say your web application is also connected to like third-party services. Are the errors just tracked solely from your web app, or can it also track, I don't know, errors from like third-party scripts, for example?
Yes, but this requires a bit of work. So of course we also fetch errors, unhandled exceptions, which are like thrown by third-party scripts, but they have a very generic error message, which is mostly script error, and that's it. This is because like for security reasons, like because they are mostly loaded from other origins. So you need to decide, you as the user of the Faro Web SDK need to decide, like, do I trust this third party or this origin, and then can tell the browser like that this thing is secure, and then we will also get like a better error message as well as useful stack traces. Yeah.
So I have a question. So it sounds like Faro is a toolkit. Basically, it's a way to instrument your code so that the code that runs in production is automatically collecting this information about users. Is it collecting information about all users, or a sample of them, or how does that work?
Yeah. At the moment, it is collecting like the data of all users, but we are currently working on a new sessions feature which is more stable and easier to use. And with this feature, we will also release a sampling mechanism based on sessions, that you can either say, hey, I want only like track a certain percentage of sessions, or you can like provide a function that you can say, I want to exclude or include different sessions and also data which belongs to that session by certain properties like a location or whatsoever. Yeah.
Because my next question was going to be, where does that data go? Because that's a lot of data to be collecting, and that could also be a performance bottleneck. Where is that data stored? Does it go into a database, or what is it?
They're going through when we're talking about the cloud. So we are providing an open source solution and a hosted solution. In the open source solution, you have to run the agent, and we have a receiver within the agent that exposes an HTTP endpoint, and it forwards the telemetry data into Loki and Tempo. Just to be clear, every data that you're sending with the Web SDK, they will ultimately be translated into uh, Loki logs and Tempo payloads. So in the OSS version of it, you can configure the agent as you want, and in the hosted version, we have our own service, which has some extra things on top of it, and we keep adding more and more things. And but ultimately they are being ingested into your databases, Loki and Tempo.
Okay, thank you. That makes a lot more sense. What I would really like then is to see the exemplar feature in Tempo, where it's not that every single one is saved, but like you can view the exemplar, but the front end version of it. Because does Faro, you know how on Tempo on Grafana Cloud you can already see the graph of all of the things of all of the tracing information, and then you can look at a specific point within that, an exemplar, and then dig into that and drill down and see, okay, where did this request go? It would be kind of cool to see a graph of errors, then find an exemplar, and then see the front end like stack trace or whatever for it. Is that already available?
No, this is something that we're currently working on, as Marco was saying. The sampling of data, and it's something that we get asked a lot about, and it's something that will be coming out real soon.
Yeah, I think that's gonna be
Maybe
great once it's implemented because it will speed up the debugging process as well. Yeah. Go on, Marco. Sorry, I thought did I cut off?
all good, all good. Thank you. Maybe one thing to add, because sometimes this causes a bit of confusion, because especially when people are used to OpenTelemetry. Faro works a bit different, because in Faro, every signal is sent as a log, except of traces. But traces or to add tracing is purely optional, because like it's a bit more resource hungry, and the protocol, the payload size gets a bit bigger, and so on. So like by default, we send everything as a like special kind of log event. Like if you send an event, it's a log of kind event. If you like send an error, it's a log of kind exception, and so on and so forth. And I think this is like important to know. Yeah.
Yeah, we recently did a Grafana Office Hours actually on Loki, and Ward Becker showed us how with a log you can actually transform that, maybe even within Grafana Agent, into like metrics and everything else that you really need. Oh, you're muted, Marie.
Always happens. So I've just pulled up like an architecture image here, just I guess for us to just show how the Grafana work for front end monitoring. So we've got the web SDK here, and then any logs, exceptions, measurements, events. These are being I guess collected by a Grafana agent. So afterwards, all the logs, exceptions that will go to Loki, and then traces will go to Tempo, and then at the end, everything will then be visualized in the Grafana dashboard. Are there any other, I guess, important info that any of you would like to share, just from like the architecture perspective, on how the Grafana Faro web SDK works, and how and how it really integrates with the rest of the Grafana stack?
Marco? I think they're both
I'm
waiting
thinking, sorry.
for
I
their
have not
name to
much.
be called.
I have not much to add architecture-wise.
Yeah.
Maybe also one thing I can mention, because Faro has its own format. So like we chose a very small format for the beacons we send. So like that the size of the payload we send is like as small as possible, and we will of course continue improving on that to make it even smaller. But this also of course then needs like this our special like receiver, which can unpack the stuff and translate it like to OTA, so we can use it in the rest of Grafana, or like we use it like that. But we also provide a transport. We call like these little modules which are responsible to actually send the data. We call them transports. And we have also provided transport which can convert the Faro format to OpenTelemetry. So in case like users want only to use the open source version of Faro or the Faro SDK, and like want to be vendor agnostic and send the data to an OTLP endpoint, they can do so. We only have one restriction, because OTLP, the protocol defines to have 3 different endpoints, one for metrics, one for logs. and one for traces. Since we Faro doesn't collect like metrics like OpenTelemetry is doing it, and we send them as logs of type measurement. So we will not send specific metrics to a metrics endpoint. So you only can use the traces and the logs endpoint. This is important to know for that. But I think it's good to know that you can also stay vendor agnostic and use the Faro SDK in this kind of way.
Yeah. Um, if I'm going to just divert a bit, so mainly we're talking about the Grafana Faro web SDK. So this is the open source version, and then we also mentioned the front end observability product that's in Grafana Cloud. So if someone is going to try out the Grafana Faro web SDK, and someone's gonna try the Grafana front end observability product, are there massive differences between the two, or whatever they can do with the web SDK, they can also do in the front end observability product, and vice versa?
The front-end observability is basically a helper product, let's say, and so we're providing a convenient way of organizing your apps, and also having like different separations between these apps, and you don't have to do this on your own. And we're providing the snippet directly, and we're giving you instructions on what to do and how to integrate it into your web app. Whereas the SDK is basically a library, right? So you can use it as you wish. And the same way, I mean, if somebody was to 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 use a different version of the web SDK, in theory, you could reverse engineer the payload and and create your own version of the SDK and start sending data into the front end observability. So, in a sense, they are different, but the one complements the other. Um, and as a cloud offering, it's meant to make the setup of an OSS project easier, but not exclude people from using it with payroll features or whatever. You can totally use it as an open source project, as a standalone, and you can use it as a cloud offering, which provides extra utilities.
So let me restate that just to check if I've understood. So the Grafana Faro OSS version is an SDK, and you can use that to instrument your code without any problems. But then the front end observability product within Grafana Cloud, it will kind of hold your hand through it and tell you exactly what to do. And then I assume it also has some dashboards that are already. Does it have dashboards already? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it kind of, in a way, kind of sounds like the Kubernetes monitoring app, where you can, just instrument your cluster yourself, but you could alternatively go do it through Grafana Cloud, and that just has a lot of the dashboards already set up. Not only does it go step by step as well, but the dashboards are actually even more important, I think, because it's kind of like an opinionated version of what dashboards we think in our experience you're going to need. Because especially if you're trying out something like this, you might be like, what even is front end observability? Like, what do I even need to be looking at? What can I look at? That can be difficult. So I guess my next question is how much of it is free and how much of it is, you have to pay for? Because you said
Uh,
that there was part of it that was already included for free. Can you see
yeah,
the dashboards for free?
yeah. So no, the okay. So I would like to think of it as, like, I would make an analogy like Marie, you're based in London, right? And
Yes.
in as far as I remember, in London, the museums are free. They have free entrance. So you can think of it as having a free entrance museum, and then you can also pay to have a guided tour. And but the main difference is that the guided tour can also be free if you have an account, and you will start getting charged only if you're having too many requests for the guided tour. So the nice thing about Grafana Cloud is the free tier accounts. They're very generous, and for small scale applications that you don't have loads of volumes of data, you can use them for free. So everything is included. We don't have any uh, features that you uh, specifically need to pay for. Everything is included. The free tier account, and it's also included in higher tier accounts. Um, it's charged by volume only, and that's it. And I would like to think of it as the museum and guided tour analogy, and mostly about the open source. So you can tour the museum yourself and Google like the rest of the information, which is a bit of a tedious process. Um, but you can do it, and you can have a very similar experience. But we can also provide something. We can also provide the the guided tour.
Yeah. Because I remember, so we have the Quick Pizza application demo project for Grafana NK6, and I was trying to integrate the Grafana Faro project, but I followed the guided tour. So I just logged in into my Grafana Cloud, went to the front end observability option and followed the instructions there. So it already provided me what configuration to add, and if I need to add like what my local URL is for my application, all those additional configuration that I think if I would have done the non-guided tour, it would probably have taken me much longer time. And this was for free, like I didn't, had to pay. So I think there's definitely advantages that is part of the overall Grafana Cloud, and that we have a free tier. So if people just want to do some POC, they just want to try it out in their different applications, then it's quite easy to integrate it with. Probably now is the right moment for you, either Costas or Marco, just to demonstrate to us what the dashboards look like in terms of the like the front end observability. So we've talked that there are a bunch of data that Grafana Faro tracks. So maybe now we can see how those are visualized if someone is going to log into Grafana Cloud and see what it looks like overall.
Which one of you is sharing your screen?
I will be sharing my
Yeah.
screen. So with this part, you're either muted or you can't share your screen.
uh, yeah. You might
I
have to,
think-
just press the share screen and we'll add it. There you go. Yep. We can see it
okay,
now.
yeah. So this is what it looks like. It's one of the development versions of our plugin, and so we're sort of dogfooding our own things. We're dogfooding the plugin with a web SDK, so it's kind of a recursive thing almost. And here on the top, you can see the the data that are most important, like page loads. We have errors. We have all the web vitals, and we have some descriptions of what each of them means. And if you see something red, then it's something going real bad. This is something that we're currently investigating because the plugin is essentially micro front end, and we're trying to uh, to make the web SDK. I mean, we will work this. It's not one of the highest priorities, but uh, with micro frontends, the data can be skewed at some points and have like different web vitals. Um, then we have the page loads and the JavaScript errors, which gives you a good example of what's going on. Like if you see, and these are example data. I want to clarify that. Um, and this gives you an idea of what is the current status. So if you are seeing multiple errors happening, then and you have reduced page loads, then it's something that is going terribly wrong. Then we have historical data of the web vitals. You can also zoom in. You can use it as if it was like a regular um, Grafana dashboard. And we also have some error. Um, uh, don't have the word. some some data related to errors and like the top exceptions, like in which URLs these are happening, and the, the the browsers that the errors are happening. Then you have different user sessions. Um, this is the configuration of the of the plugin. We're using cores, for example, to prevent abuse. It's one of the things that we're doing to prevent abuse, actually. And here also you have the configuration of. This is like a snippet that you can use it directly into your build, or if you don't use any build tools and you have um, more traditional web apps, we're also providing a CDN version that you can embed into uh, your page directly. And we also have the error awareness page, which is basically an error tracking, and you can see the errors that are happening in live. Uh, um, and you can use like we can do this, and yeah, for example, you have these errors happening, and you can inspect the error. Um, you can see the stack trace, and you can go to the respective session, and there are lots of cool things you can do, and we're doing a lot of other cool things as well. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah. If you just go back to the main dashboard, so I think a while ago, I was talking about how I configured it with the quick pizza. So this was exactly it. I just went to the settings and the web SDK configuration, and I just copied the code snippet. So it's really quite easy to integrate with your web applications. If for example, so let's say you like from a like an error perspective, does it also um show like the trace, for example, so if an action caused this error, and then will it display, for example, the whole trace up to the back end layer, or does it just stop on like the front end? I guess my question is, does it give us like an overview of any errors that might happen in your back end APIs as well that might be actually the issue?
This is something that we're currently working on as well, and we have our sibling team, which is called Application Observability, and the idea is that we provide a platform agnostic end-to-end tracing solution, distributed, and I mean, yeah, it will be distributed, and but currently you cannot do it through and that's why we call it front-end observability and not
Mm.
application observability yet, or like end-to-end observability. The idea is that you see only things related to your front end, but going forward, we will eventually have this cooperate.
Yeah, I think that would be cool to see. So speaking of Web Vitals, because I know we've spoken about the K6 browser as well, and K6 browser is also tracking the Web Vitals. Question that people from the community might have: if they are already using K6 browser, should they still use Grafana Faro?
Marco, I will let you have that one.
Yeah, so you mean like especially in terms of the web vitals, or
Yes, because
yeah.
they might think that, oh, I'm already tracking my Web Vitals via
Mhm.
K6 browser or something similar. Should I still use Grafana Faro?
Yeah. Yes, they should use Faro, of course. No, but it's important, like, to know the difference. Like, as we talked about at the beginning of the session, like, the Faro tracks like what is going on in the real world outside. And say we have, let's say, use largest contentful paint as an example again. And of course, largest contentful paint like covers a whole range of things going on till the browser like is able to render the largest contentful thing, whichever that is. And like this also means like sending the request and like doing all the stuff, the backend processing it, answering it, and so on. And like we want, of course, also have insights into this real world latencies and want to find out, okay, now we're having a bad largest contentful paint, and now I want to find out like what causes this problem. Is it maybe a rendering issue only on the browser, or maybe then I look at my time to first byte and see, oh, like time to first byte is also really high. Then it must be maybe happening like in the whole chain, like from sending and processing the request till I get my first byte back. And um, so I can like find out these things. I can scope it down and see maybe I have things happen only in a specific browser or on a specific end device or for a specific region and all that stuff. And these are things you cannot like cover like that in a lab test, yeah, or like observe all the time, and so like you get the results, what's going on in the world. Yeah.
I think also when, as testers, we know that there's something very appealing about the idea of exhaustive testing, but it's not reality. You can't actually and shouldn't strive for 100% test coverage, because you can't, there's a bit of hubris in that, to think that you can actually expect all of the things that could potentially happen. But one example is devices. So for example, with K6 browser, we don't test it on every single possible browser device combination there is. We use Chromium, for example. What if someone's using, something on mobile on some old Android device, and they're using Opera on it or something like that? Those things that were, I mean, I don't know why you would be looking at Grafana on a mobile device, but you could, those are the sort of things that real humans do. And something like Grafana Faro would still be able to measure an experience for those users that Grafana K6 wouldn't have been able to cover. So I think that could be a real good use case for it.
Yeah. I think as well, because if you're only tracking the Web Vital metrics that K6 browser provide, again, that can give you not the whole picture. Because what you can do is you can then compare like a user journey that you've automated using K6 browser, and then check like particular session in Grafana Faro and see what the Web Vital metrics are for people using it in the real world, and then see if you can also try and replicate that with K6 browser. And then you can, instead of, I guess, um, trying to make the two metrics like the same number, because they're not going to be the same, because there's a lot of differences between the two, like network conditions, like so on and so forth. But at least you can see the trend happening as well. Like if there is a fix that you've released in your application, you can use K6 browser to simulate that particular scenario, and then you can then track the metrics over time, both from K6 browser and Grafana Faro side. So it's really a complementary tool, like with one another. I guess my next question is, now that we're talking about K6 browser, would the two of you be able to share like what kind of future integrations we can see? Because I think Nicole and I have been spoiled with like requesting features. So I think it doesn't hurt to ask, like, are there any potential integrations between the two products? Who's gonna go? Costas or Marco?
Um, Marco is currently working on this, but we do have some discussions with the K6 group on we had some great ideas on how these products can cooperate with one the other, and I don't want to spoil, uh, or I'm not sure if I can. I don't want to be the Tom Holland of Grafana Labs,
No,
and
I mean, I think we can talk about ideas and things that we can hope for, but we just can't like say it's gonna happen tomorrow.
yeah. So I think it all falls back to the differences between real user monitoring and synthetic monitoring, and how you can use the one to help the other. And it's mostly so. For example, it's one idea. I'm not saying this is happening, um, but for example, you might have an error happening in your web page from a real user, and then you want to make sure that this error is indeed happening. So it would be convenient if you could like click on this error and have a K6 browser spinned up somewhere, and then you run the exact steps, the exact user journey, because we're keeping track of it. If it's like if it's a tracked user session, and then you could say, yeah, indeed this is happening, and I can recreate it, but I don't have to do all the manual labor to recreate it, and I can use something that it's already there, and I can recreate it with a click of a button. And that's one idea that the one can help the other earn, or anything really. It's like the the limitation is your imagination.
There's also some things that I can see from the other side too, things that K6 could get from maybe building on the same things that your team has already worked on. Like I know I was just talking within the K6 team, we were talking about how to get tracing for K6 browser. And it's like, well, Grafana Faro already does it. So maybe that's something that we could kind of borrow from one tool and bring to the other to bring those two together, because they're on different ends of the spectrum, right? Marie was talking about how they're always going to be different, and one of the other ways that one of the other reasons why they're always different is that K6 browser is going to be not run continuously. It's run usually as part of a test suite, so meaning it might be part of a CI/CD pipeline, but it's not always getting those metrics. Like unlike with Grafana Faro, there are always users that are coming in, and Faro is going to be taking those metrics. So it tends to be more of like duration specific. It's like time boxed basically. So there's a lot that we could still do with that information. Oh, and the other difference is that K6 browser would more likely be run as part of a load test, because it's really easy to add a load, an API test to it, and also just ramp it up in general. Yeah, I have one like wild out there thing that I've discussed with no one, so I'm going to discuss it now. What about Pyroscope? Any integrations planned with Pyroscope? You're
I
muted.
don't know about any, to be honest.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm sure you don't know because I just brought it up right now.
I
you
mean,
you
it,
heard it first from here.
it sounds very cool. but there is a limitation with. And I don't want to discourage anyone from doing it, um, but there is a limitation with the end devices that we are ad- addressing Faro to, and usually the apps that we are instrumenting are very performance critical. Like you want them to work in a supercomputer, but they should be able to work in like very old smartphone, and we want to have as little interference with the performance of the application as possible, and don't just mean uh, computing performance, but also network performance. And we don't want to. We are measuring performance when we're not impacting it. So having flame graphs, it's something that it's a more of a I wouldn't say premium feature, but I would say a performance hitting feature for uh, small applications. Not small, but in terms of like limited uh, computing power. Um, but I mean, in a previous company that I used to work for, um, we used to do flame graphs. We had a Ruby on Rails stack, and we used to do flame graphs with, like, but we were being very explicit about it. I mean, the users also could do it, but you had to enter some certain parameters in your payload request so that it actually does uh, flame graph. So it might be worth looking into, but I think currently the developer tools that are provided from Chrome and Firefox, the flame graphs are super amazing, and uh, yeah, we will see. We'll see. I don't want to say no.
That's kind of
Yeah.
where I was coming from. That the idea as a front end developer that you could see like what actually takes up more memory, or what, being able to look into someone's developer like DevTools console, or the performance part of it, where you see memory and CPU utilization depending on what part of the application you're accessing. That could kind of be cool too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think as we said, like Faro is built very modular, and you can like write your own instrumentation. And the idea could be, of course, to write some kind of instrumentation which delivers you the respective data, like a pyroscope kind of instrumentation, and you can then decide to only deliver this instrumentation to like a small fraction of your users, or maybe only internal users. So you get some of this data without impacting your like whole user base, for example. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like can
We'll
do so
see then,
much.
I guess, yeah, for like maybe the next Grafana Office Hours with the both of you will have will have Pyroscope integrated. I guess yeah, we are out of time, but if people want to get started with the Grafana Faro web SDK, so I've added the GitHub link here. I think there's like a section there on how to get started. There's an instruction in terms of like how you can like how you can integrate this locally into your projects. But if you want to try out the front end observability product, then there's also a handy documentation for that. So it's gonna be part of the chat comments. So just make sure to check those links out. But it's been really great to have you both, and it's really amazing to hear that real user monitoring and synthetic monitoring, it goes hand in hand and not really, I guess, replacing each other. So it shows that those two really tend to work together rather than work against each other. But next week, we're back with another episode. I believe this is with John Hill, one of our Grafana K6 champions. So he's going to be talking about automated performance modeling with NASA, Open, MCP, Grafana Cloud, and K6. So it's gonna be an exciting episode. But yeah, thank you so much for being with us today, and I hope you all learned as much as I did today.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Kostas and Marco. It was great to have you both here.
Thank you.
Thank you
Yes,
both.
thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay,
Thanks.
and bye bye. Thank
Thanks,
Bye.
you.
everyone. See